create a listening culture that elevates the employee experience inside your organization. In my new Cycle Listening Action Planning Guide, I uncover how you can ensure those you lead feel heard by taking 3 key approaches to listening at work. Get the free guide at heatheryounger.com today. Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I have a special guest on, Elijah German. And he and I met on LinkedIn, which, you know, for those who listen, I meet a lot of people there. And we were having an interaction on a post I had, and he just showed up in a way that I was like, ooh, I just want to have him on the show. And it was really something about the post about caring leadership and how it resonated with him in his own personal style. And he happens to be in sales, which is just, that's the part that I think is so unique, because I love talking to people that are leading sales, but thinking about heart-based work. How are they leading with heart first? So that's why you're here, Elijah. Welcome.
Thank you, Heather. I'm really, really excited to be a guest on your show and your podcast, and how caring leadership has showed up for me in my personal life as well as my professional life. So thank you.
Absolutely. So where are you right now in your leadership journey? Share that.
Sure. So currently I am the head of sales for a orthodontic tech-enabled, modern-enabled business called Uniform Teeth, based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. We have operations in Seattle and Bellevue and Chicago. I've been in my role for just over a year. And prior to this role, I've been fortunate to work for some amazing companies on the tech retail side, as well as the software side, Microsoft, Tesla, Apple, Enjoy Technologies. And so it made sense to start here at Uniform Teeth. My in-laws are all in the dental field, and that's what brought me over here. So being able to bring over all the experiences that I've had and move them into a different vertical. Absolutely. Yeah.
And for a salesperson, like, you have beautiful teeth. Like, wow, that makes sense. Everybody's in the dental space and you have beautiful smiling teeth. So, right? Like, because you could see it the other way around. It's like, I'm trying to sell this to you and I don't have a nice looking mouth. So let's just say that here. You have a great smile.
Thank you, Heather. You as well. And there's so much behind the aesthetics of a smile. And when that shows up for our patients and for people in general, there's something beautiful about a healthy and confident smile, and that conversation that flows from that as well. So absolutely.
It's so true. I noticed I've gotten to the point where I really have grown into the smile and really love my smile. And so I use it very strategically if I'm try to get a point across, or I want someone to be uplifted in the moment. I just use it. It's like a little piece of prescription, like a little bit of a boost of vitamin H when I give the smile. And I know that, like, you know, and so I don't like take it for granted or like try to use it for manipulation, but it's more about like, how do I use it to uplift people? So I love that concept a lot. And let's dive in now into this, you know, this idea of like leading with heart in the context of sales. Before we started recording, you were talking about, you know, how, and oftentimes in sales, we're thinking like goals, metrics, like go get it, let's hit it hard type of thing. And we were kind of removing the human element from it. I'd love for you to just talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, absolutely. And so in sales in general, specifically in my sales career, we are hired to complete a job and drive productivity and hit sales targets. And that's what sales is all about. However, there is more that meets the eye than a metric. And I have developed these experiences and these skills throughout my career. And it was through mentors as well as leaders in my career that's helped flex those leadership muscles. And when you think about targets and sales, there's so much that goes behind that, because as sales folks, as salespeople, even sales leaders, your sense of worth and value is tied into a number. And that is not true at all. And so as a sales leader, how do we articulate that to our sales staff? How do we articulate that to an organization and even to oneself as a leader that, hey, how do we give our best, and how does that show in our day-to-day? Are we walking the walk? Are we talking the talk? And how do we know that our staff, as well as our organization, even us as sales leaders, like, are we exemplifying that care for who that person is and not what the output, essentially, how that shows up?
On that, like, I am telling you, you just like the nail on the head. I so believe that. And it's so when you read, I know you just picked up the book, The Art of Caring Leadership. And so when you read that, you will see all of those elements in there. And I think of Mario McCracken. Mario McCracken just wrote a book on caring more in sales. I cannot remember the exact title right now, but he is like one of my besties. Love him, love him. And so in there, he talks so much about like, what are those elements of care that we are driving forward when we're in the sales environment, so that people know that we're hearing them, that we care about them in and of themselves, not just for what they do for us, what we get for them. I have this philosophy. It's not just in sales, but salespeople really have to take this to heart more. And it is when we go into an environment, are we listening to get something, or are we listening to give something? So are we listening to make sure that we deliver a pointed prescription for the need or the pain that they have? Or are we listening to give them and point and push what it is we want to get to them so that we can get more out of it? Now, having said that, I've been in sales for a long time. And even in the role I'm in, I'm a consultative salesperson, right? I have to, it's my business. There have been times, especially like maybe 20 years ago in my early sales journey, where I did do more of the getting the philosophy, and it felt more manipulative. And it was a very uncomfortable place for me. I realized after a while that it wasn't natural for me to do that. So figuring out as you as a person, if you are just into sales role, sales leadership, are you leaning in to the other person's perspective to figure out what you can give them that solves their real pain? Or are you making up a pain and selling them something and just so you can get something and meet a metric, right? So that's just something to put out there. What do you think about that, Elijah?
Yeah, those are great thoughts. And for salespeople, the idea of objections, life situations that happen within their own personal lives. What are the external factors outside of what essentially they can control, whether it's face-to-face consulting or sales through B2B or B2C. The foundation of a meaningful relationship starts with active listening and that genuine spirit that, hey, I care about who you are as a person. Essentially, when it comes to sales, the services, for the most part, can really sell themselves. And I truly believe that the client or the person that's purchasing what we are positioning is bought into who we are as a person. And if we're establishing that trust and that meaningful relationship, all of that flows. And so, however, when we articulate that as a salesperson, the things that come about from those scenarios when we are positioning like, hey, here's my agenda, right? We know that we have a goal, we have a task. However, when you are building that relationship, that discovery process, we cannot position the service or the value until we kind of break down those walls. We know that they trust us, that they know that we are for them. There's a huge focus on that 3-letter word "for," that they know that, hey, this person really cares for me and really is listening to me and is identifying a pain point or a value. Tell me more. And so there is an art and science around cultivating those relationships, so our clients can open up to us. And until we are able to break that and establish that rapport, I truly believe that once we do that, then positioning the sale or the start of something new, that value proposition, is much more easier because they're able to open it up to us and say, hey, you know what? Tell me more.
Okay. So I have to ask this because I'm just so inspired by you for, your youth and your wisdom and all of that. So I'm curious to know, where does your drive to lead come from? Like, where does your drive to even lead in this caring way come from?
Sure. So I grew up in the church. If I had to be honest, I grew up in the church, and knowing that like servant leadership has been instilled in myself when I was a young man until who I am today, is that there's something that's much more bigger than myself. So outside of being a man of faith, as a parent, as a father, as a husband, that how I show up every day is a choice, and that not only stems in my personal life, but also my professional life. And there is no other reason than to give your best and to be your best simply because you can. That, not that we have to, but we get to. I truly believe that. And so it shows up in my work. There was a leader who I had in my early professional career. His name is James Carcel, and he was my VP of sales for the West region when I was working for restaurant.com for quite some time, many moons ago. And he took a chance on me and really developed me as an early sales leader. And through that servant leadership component, it really resonated with me. It gave me the opportunity to fail, to try again, to see what works and what didn't. And through that opportunity, I'm forever grateful because that has opened up the experience that I needed to really cultivate my sales leadership career.
That's a beautiful thing. So I am curious, has there ever been a time, that you can think of, a specific story where maybe you weren't that best leader, you weren't that caring leader, you weren't that kind of faith-based, servant-focused kind of leader? What did that look like specifically in that story? And then what did you do to come out of it, to kind of maybe become more enlightened, to say, ooh, I want to make sure I lead in a different way?
What immediately comes to my mind is an opportunity where I was working for an organization that is a leader in the electric vehicle industry, and through that experience, I developed grit and really growth mindset through that time period. However, I was really focused on the output and driving for sales, that I really forgot who I was, Heather, as a leader, and my foundation individually as a person, my self-worth and my identity was lost in a scorecard versus who was around me. And I found that because I allowed myself to get to that point, I felt that I needed to control the output of my sales team versus working through them to help cultivate relationships that may have a desirable and favorable outcome. And that did not show up well for me. And I had to learn through that lesson through failing in that component. And so through that experience, it really shed some light on who I was as a person and what do I want to stand for? How do I gut check myself and say, hey, you know what? This was a great opportunity to get back on your feet and really focus on who you are and what you want to achieve. And that whole realization and coming to that point in my life and in my career, it can be a struggle because you can be bought into the day-to-day, the work that you're in, and the hope strategy. And I'm not a hope strategy person, that it will get better. So sometimes as sales professionals or people in general, something drastic may have to happen to really say, hey, let's open our eyes here and focus on what's important, right? And through that experience, it allowed me to kind of re-gravitate and refocus on what is important and go from there.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. So now it's your turn to you get to turn the tables. You get to ask me a question, any question you want. And then I answer it for all the listeners and for you. And then we'll go on from there.
Sure.
What do you have for me?
Sure. So Heather, you may or may not get this question that is asked, but when you think about caring leadership and how that has showed up for you as a leader, can you kindly tell me a story or an example where you as a leader helped develop someone else that was a growing leader or aspiring to be a growing leader? And how did you mentor them specifically to essentially follow after your footsteps for those that are out there that are looking to take a step up within a leadership role? Any opportunity that you have come across where you could tell that story to someone that's aspiring to step into leadership, to be a leader? What does that look like?
Yeah, I was working at an organization that was like 5 companies were merging together. And I had a team member who at some point before I came on working there, she had been there for like 20 years, but before I came there, she was a manager. And then at some point she was kind of demoted through it was another manager. And it was just kind of like a little bit messy, but she then ended up reporting to me and we developed a really close bond. But she was like a team lead, and not as much like didn't become a manager. She wanted to be a manager again. So I worked with her to just see okay, why was it that you were put back into like a frontline sales role? Because she's a large account management, like sales. And then I started to see kind of some of the reasons why. Part of it was that she had a lack of confidence, and she would probably admit to that. A lack of confidence around those who were kind of senior leaders. Also, she was not, was having a hard time defining how should interacting with people that she was working with, and now she would be trying to work like above, basically. They would be reporting to her. And so she had to kind of fall down a couple times in front of me for me to help her up and then help her course correct so that she could get better and be in a position for me to then advocate for her to be a manager, because it was like, because of the merged company and I was a director level, I had to say, well, why should I justify making this particular person a manager? And so we had to work through a couple different scenarios where she fell down, had interactions that maybe weren't so great, or where she had a lack of confidence. And I just try to help her, help her in her mindset, think about how she should see herself first. And that really changed then how she behaved outwardly. And then that then helped other people see her differently. So I would say in that circumstance, it was just helping her with a mindset shift. And then how, again, behaviorally, how she might interact with certain people. It worked out well. She did get promoted to manager, and she was thrilled for that. She obviously looked to me for that, but in the end, she deserved it because she did all the hard work to get there. So.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And some of the takeaways that I think about what you shared here is that, confidence is something that's so huge. And sometimes for sales professionals or leaders in general, it is something that is a skill that can be developed over time through experience and coaching conversations, or it could be a struggle on the other side of the pendulum where the sales leader or the leader in general may want that confidence more for that person or that salesperson than they do individually. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And I know that as a leader in the teams that I've led, as we inspire and motivate our team to achieve more, I think about the majority of the successful team members that I work with all had that innate feeling, that innate skill set of confidence of saying, hey, you know what, in spite of XYZ, we're going to go out there and make it happen. And utilize the tools and resources that are available to be successful. So appreciate you sharing that.
I am curious to know, Elijah, from your perspective, how important do you think listening is in leadership?
Yeah, I think that leadership is very important. I think that active listening is also equally as important. And because there's more than the words that are shared in between our staff, salespeople, or leaders in general. Sometimes there could be more than meets the eye, or things that we hear that we think we are listening, but really we're hearing. And I'm guilty of that all the time, even in my personal life. However, it doesn't mask that their intentions are good. It is the actions behind what we're hearing and how we can help support. An example, I had a recent scenario where we had a conversation around objections and how do we overcome objections. And the situation was brought up where the customer or client had some limitations around how they would pay for treatment. And so, long story short, identifying the root cause, it really was not how the patient or the customer could get started with exactly treatment, but our preconceived notions of how we think or feel based on what we heard. And so thinking for the customer is something that we do not encourage. We want to actually physically ask those questions. And so that way we can actually hear and listen what the root cause is and what the intent is. And so, active listening and listening in general is super important for us as leaders, because that way we can actually coach our teams through that. So through that scenario, I was able to coach our team member, like, hey, like, these are great examples, great objections, but how do we discover more? Tell me more. And from there, we're able to pivot the conversation to next steps.
I love the tell me more. But what I really love is the don't think for the customer. Just don't think for anybody else, period, right? Don't think for them. And it's like how do we do that? Because often it's like, oh, I want to do that. I think I'm a good listener. I really want to try, but it's so hard because everything around us are so many distractions, right? So I really appreciate that perspective. Do not think for the customer. Yeah. Get to ask the questions and shut your mouth and like get all the other distractions about you so you can really, really focus on what they're saying. Love it.
Absolutely, Heather. And I think that as sales professionals, we have this mental checklist that we go through where we connect with prospects, patients, clients, whoever it may be, B2B, B2C. And we know that there's a standard rubric that we want to utilize as we make it our own, so to speak, when we ask these questions, develop rapport, position the value proposition or the value of the product or offering we're positioning, and go from there. Tell us more. However, going back to caring leadership and like how that shows up for us as the leader and how we are able to support our teams through that, being able to truly listen through our team's perspectives on what they're dealing with, so we can coach and course correct as needed, is something that has been super helpful for me as a leader.
Mm. So for those who are listening right now who are like, oh, this is some good stuff. Like, I mean, what might be like one last pearl of wisdom you'd leave listeners with that could get them through their leadership journey, that could, you think is like the crux of leadership? What do you think that would be?
Sure. I would say that those that are listening out there, I believe in you. You are more than enough. There's so much in this world that tells us that we're not. And so I inspire you. I see you. I motivate you. I give you that good energy that you too, as an up-and-coming leader or as a veteran leader, someone that has many years of experience or just getting started, that you are capable to achieve more. And in this world where it can be easily forgotten because of social media or things that we see around us that may influence us, know that you are capable to do great things, and you can be inspired and motivated in your own way, and it doesn't require a title. And so there are opportunities for you to become a leader in your own regard, and whatever your role is, even in your personal life, how that shows up, who you are as a person, as some may say, like character counts. That is a small step to showing that you care, and be able to influence others to identify that, hey, I care about you, and we essentially can win together.
I love that. Well, Elijah, you inspired me, and I bet you the listeners out there, you've been inspired by him too. His words. Wow, what a powerhouse. Caring leader with heart. So if you have found great value in this, please do make sure that you share it far and wide, all the listeners out there. And make sure you also go to Apple Podcasts and write that 5-star review. If you're somebody who's on here week after week and you haven't written that review, okay, now I'm going to come find you. Do that, because that's how we move up on the algorithm. And we are already pretty highly rated now, but it helps us go further up, which means now they recommend the content and more. And then you have a huge impact on other leaders around the world. So thank you so much, Elijah. This has been a pleasure. I'm so glad I invited you on the podcast.
Thank you, Heather. It's been a pleasure. And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for listening to the Leadership Heart podcast. Be well.